There's something about the word thrash that already feels like it's moving faster than you are. Like it doesn't wait for you to catch up. It just drags you into its rhythm whether you're ready or not. And the first time I saw the trailer, I had that exact sensation. Not confusion, not even excitement right away, but this strange, pulsing tension. Like the movie was testing how long you could keep up before it completely overwhelmed you. It opens in a way that doesn't scream for attention, which is interesting because most modern trailers do the opposite. You get this quiet, almost eerily still shot of an empty highway just before dawn. That blue-gray light where the world hasn't quite decided to wake up yet. And for a second, you think maybe this is going to be one of those slow burn character pieces. Something introspective, maybe even meditative. But then there's this distant sound, metal scraping against metal, and it doesn't belong in that stillness. It feels wrong. And that's the first clue that this film isn't interested in easing you in gently. The camera doesn't rush. It kind of glides, almost too calmly, toward the source of that sound. And then you see it. A wrecked car, but not fresh. It's been there for a while. There's dust on the windshield. One of the doors hanging open like it's mid-breath. No music yet. Just that scraping noise getting louder, sharper. And right when you expect a jump scare or some sudden movement, it cuts. Hard cut. Now you're in a completely different space. Neon lights, packed crowd, bodies moving like a single organism. It's a warehouse party, but not the kind you've seen 100 times. There's a rawness to it. The lighting is harsh. The colors almost aggressive. You can feel the heat, the sweat, the chaos. And the soundtrack finally kicks in. Not a polished track, but something gritty, distorted, almost industrial. It doesn't just play in the background, it pushes forward like it's part of the story itself. And that's where you first see him. The protagonist. Not introduced with a heroic shot or anything designed to make you immediately like him. He's just there, in the middle of it, moving through the crowd, like he's searching for something, or maybe trying to escape it. There's this tension in his face, like he's carrying something heavy, but refuses to let it show. The trailer doesn't give you his name right away, which I actually appreciate. It forces you to watch him instead of labeling him. What really caught me off guard is how quickly the tone starts shifting. You go from that chaotic energy to these fragmented flashes, like memories breaking through. A woman laughing in a sunlit kitchen. A hand slamming against a steering wheel. A close-up of blood on knuckles, but you don't see the fight that caused it. It's all disjointed, almost like the film is speaking in pieces instead of sentences. And that's when you realize something important. This isn't a linear experience. Even the trailer is telling you, don't expect everything to make sense right away. There's a moment about halfway through where the sound drops out completely. Not fades, just disappears. And you're left with this silent sequence of the protagonist running. Not in a cinematic, slow motion kind of way, but frantic, uneven, like he's actually exhausted. The camera shakes just enough to feel real without becoming distracting. And in that silence, you start noticing things you might have missed before. The way he keeps looking over his shoulder, the way he stumbles slightly like he's already been running for too long. Then the sound crashes back in. Not music this time. Sirens. Loud, disorienting, layered over that same distorted track from earlier. And suddenly the trailer is accelerating. Quick cuts, flashes of confrontation, glimpses of characters you don't fully understand yet. There's a figure in a dark coat who keeps appearing in these split-second shots, never fully visible, always just enough to feel threatening. You don't know who they are, but the trailer makes it very clear. They matter. What I found really interesting is how the dialogue is used, or rather, how little of it there is. Most trailers lean heavily on lines that explain the plot or give you something quotable. Thrash barely does that. When characters speak, it's fragmented. Half sentences, interrupted thoughts, things that feel more like real conversations than scripted exposition. There's one line, just one, that sticks out. The protagonist, almost whispering, says, "It doesn't stop. It just changes shape." And it's not delivered like a dramatic punchline. It feels tired, resigned, like he's already lost something important. Visually, the trailer leans into contrast in a way that feels very deliberate. Bright, chaotic environments smashed against these quiet, almost suffocating moments of isolation. There's a shot of him sitting alone in a bathroom, fluorescent light flickering overhead, and it lasts just a second longer than you expect. Long enough to feel uncomfortable. Long enough to make you wonder what's going on inside his head when everything else goes quiet. And then there's the action, or what passes for action here. It's not clean. It's not stylized in that glossy, choreographed way you see in big studio films. When violence happens, it's messy, abrupt, and often partially obscured. You catch glimpses of it rather than full sequences. A punch thrown out of frame. Someone hitting the ground just as the camera turns. It feels less like spectacle and more like consequence. By the time the trailer starts building toward its final moments, you realize it hasn't really told you what the movie is about in the traditional sense. There's no clear mission, no defined antagonist laid out neatly for you. Instead, it's given you a feeling, a kind of emotional landscape. You understand the tone, the tension, the instability, but the specifics are still just out of reach. And that final stretch, it's almost hypnotic. The editing becomes faster, but not chaotic. There's a rhythm to it, like everything you've seen so far is starting to sync up. The music shifts again, becoming more melodic, but still carrying that underlying distortion. It's like the film is revealing a different layer of itself right at the end. You get one last sequence of images, the highway again, but now at night. The warehouse, now empty. The protagonist standing still for the first time, not running, not moving, just standing there. And for a split second, there's this look on his face that's hard to read. Not relief, not fear, something in between. And then, just before it cuts to black, that scraping sound from the beginning comes back. Same sound, same unsettling feeling, but now it means something different. And the strange thing is, once that trailer ends, it doesn't really leave you with answers. It leaves you with a kind of emotional residue that just sits there, quietly unsettling you, long after the screen goes dark. Which is exactly the kind of setup that makes diving into the actual story feel less like watching a movie and more like stepping into something already in motion. Something that doesn't care whether you're fully prepared to understand it right away. So when the film itself begins, it doesn't rewind or reframe what you've already seen. It just continues that same uneasy rhythm, like you've already missed the first few pages of a book, and now you're forced to piece things together as you go. The opening sequence mirrors that highway from the trailer, but there's more context this time. It's not empty because it's early morning. It's empty because something has already happened. There are faint skid marks on the asphalt, barely visible unless you're really paying attention, and the camera lingers just long enough for you to notice them before drifting past, almost like it's deliberately refusing to explain. You're introduced to the protagonist, Evan Hale, without ceremony. No dramatic reveal, no musical cue telling you how to feel about him. He's just there, sitting in a car that looks like it's seen better days, engine off, hands resting on the wheel like he's forgotten what he was about to do. And right away, there's this sense that he's not just tired, he's worn down in a way that feels cumulative, like whatever he's dealing with didn't start yesterday. The film doesn't rush to define him either. Instead, it builds him through small, almost throwaway moments. The way he flinches slightly when a truck passes too close. The way he checks his phone but doesn't unlock it. The way he sits there a little too long before finally stepping out of the car, like the act of moving forward requires more effort than it should. What becomes clear pretty quickly is that Evan is living in a kind of controlled chaos. He works nights at a logistics warehouse, not the kind of job that offers stability, just enough routine to keep him anchored. The environment is loud, mechanical, impersonal. Conveyor belts, forklifts, fluorescent lights that never quite stop buzzing. And yet, within that noise, there's a strange quietness to how he moves through it, like he's disconnected from everything happening around him. You start noticing patterns. He avoids certain people, not out of fear exactly, but out of something closer to recognition, like he knows what they represent and doesn't want to engage with it. There's a coworker, Marcus, who tries to pull him into conversation a few times. Nothing deep, just casual human interaction. But Evan always deflects. Not rudely, just enough to keep a distance. And then there are the interruptions. Not in the narrative sense, but in Evan's perception. Moments where the film itself seems to fracture slightly. He'll be in the middle of a task, scanning packages or loading crates, and suddenly there's this flicker, an image that doesn't belong. That same sunlit kitchen from the trailer. A woman's voice, indistinct but familiar. It's never explained outright, but it's clear these aren't random flashes. They're memories, or something close to them. What's interesting is how the film handles these moments. It doesn't treat them like traditional flashbacks. There's no soft focus, no visual cue that says, this is the past. They bleed into the present in a way that feels intrusive, almost aggressive. Like Evan isn't choosing to remember. He's being forced to. And the more you watch, the more you start to understand that whatever happened to him isn't a single event. It's layered, complicated. There's no neat origin point where everything went wrong. About 20 minutes in, the narrative introduces a new element. Not dramatically, just gradually threading it into the background. Evan starts noticing the same car. At first, it's easy to dismiss. A dark sedan. Nothing particularly distinctive about it. It passes by while he's walking home. It's parked across the street when he leaves his building. It shows up again near the warehouse. The film doesn't underline this. There's no ominous music cue telling you this is important. It trusts you to notice it the same way Evan does. Slowly, uncertainly. And what makes it effective is that Evan himself doesn't react right away. He hesitates to even acknowledge it, like he's not sure if it's real or just another trick of his mind. But eventually, that uncertainty starts to crack. There's a scene where he's sitting in a diner late at night, one of those places that never quite closes, where the lighting is too bright and the coffee tastes like it's been sitting for hours. He's alone, staring at nothing in particular, and through the window, you see it, that same car idling across the street. This time, it lingers, and for the first time, Evan reacts. Not dramatically. He doesn't confront it or run. He just watches, quietly, carefully, like he's trying to decide whether acknowledging it will make it more real. That's when the tension starts to shift. Up until this point, the film has been building a kind of internal pressure. Everything happening inside Evan's head, his fragmented memories, his emotional isolation. But now, there's something external pushing back. Something that exists outside of him. Something that might have intentions. The pacing adjusts almost imperceptibly. Scenes become slightly shorter, cuts a little sharper. The rhythm of the film starts to echo that feeling from the trailer. That sense of being pulled forward, whether you're ready or not. And then comes the first real break in Evan's routine. He doesn't go to work one night. There's no big decision, no dramatic declaration. He just doesn't show up. Instead, he drives. No clear destination, just movement. The city shifts around him, industrial zones giving way to quieter neighborhoods, then back again. It's aimless, but it doesn't feel random. It feels like he's trying to outrun something he can't quite define. That's when the film gives you one of its most telling moments so far. He stops at a gas station, the kind that sits just off a highway, half lit, half forgotten. While he's filling the tank, there's a brief interaction with the clerk inside, nothing significant on the surface. But as Evan walks back to his car, he freezes. That scraping sound, not loud, not obvious, but unmistakable, and it's coming from behind him. The camera doesn't rush to reveal anything. It stays with Evan, focused on his reaction, the way his body tenses, the way his breathing shifts. You can feel the hesitation, the question of whether turning around will confirm something he's not ready to face. When he finally does, there's nothing there. Or at least, nothing that shouldn't be there. But the car, that dark sedan, it's parked just beyond the edge of the light, closer than before. And now, for the first time, it doesn't feel like coincidence anymore. And the shift from coincidence to intention, that's where the film really starts tightening its grip. Because up until now, you could still argue that everything happening around Evan might just be fragments of a mind under pressure. But the moment that car edges closer, deliberately, unmistakably, the story stops giving you that comfort of ambiguity and starts asking a different question entirely. What if this isn't just in his head? Evan doesn't confront it. That's the important part. He gets in his car, shuts the door a little harder than necessary, and just sits there for a second, hands gripping the wheel again, echoing that first image we saw of him. There's a pattern forming, whether he realizes it or not. Stillness before movement, hesitation before action. And then he drives. But now, the driving feels different. It's no longer aimless. There's a tension in it. Like every turn, every glance in the rearview mirror is calculated. The film starts placing you right inside that mindset. You're not just watching him, you're scanning the environment with him. Streetlights feel harsher, shadows feel deeper. Every passing car feels like it could be the one. And that's when the narrative begins to open up just a little more. Not by explaining, but by introducing someone who disrupts Evan's isolation in a way Marcus never could. Her name is Lena. You don't get a big introduction. She just appears in a space that already feels worn in. A late-night laundromat where machines hum like they're half alive. Evan's there because he needs to be, not because he wants to be. Routine again. Control again. But Lena doesn't fit into that pattern. She's not intrusive, not overly curious, but there's a kind of grounded presence to her that stands in contrast to Evan's instability. Their first interaction is almost accidental. A dropped coin, a brief exchange, nothing that screams, "This is important." But the way the camera lingers just slightly longer than necessary tells you otherwise. She notices things. Not in a suspicious way, but in a perceptive one. And more importantly, she notices Evan noticing things. There's a moment where the lights in the laundromat flicker, just once, and Evan reacts instantly, like it means something more than it should. Lena catches that. She doesn't question it directly, but there's a look, subtle, that says she's filing it away. What makes this dynamic work is that Lena doesn't try to fix anything. She doesn't push for explanations. She just exists in the same space without demanding clarity, which, for someone like Evan, feels almost disarming. They talk, but it's not deep conversation. It's fragmented, uneven, sometimes awkward, real. And for a brief stretch, the film allows you to breathe a little. Not fully, though. There's always something just beneath the surface. The hum of the machines becomes almost hypnotic, and for a moment, you think maybe this is where the film slows down, gives its characters room to settle. But then, again, without warning, that sound creeps back in. Not loud, not even distinct, just enough. Evan hears it before anyone else does. His head tilts slightly, like he's trying to isolate it from the noise around him. Lena notices the shift immediately. She doesn't hear anything, but she sees him go somewhere else mentally. And this time, instead of ignoring it, she asks, "What is it?" It's a simple question, but it lands heavier than expected. Evan doesn't answer right away. He looks around, scanning, the same way he did at the gas station. And for a second, you almost believe there's nothing there again. Until the camera cuts. Outside the laundromat, across the street, that car, parked. Engine off this time, completely still. And here's where the film does something really smart. It doesn't jump to confrontation. It lets that image sit. It lets you process the distance between inside and outside, between safety and whatever's waiting beyond that glass. And when it cuts back to Evan, you can see it in his face now. Not confusion, not doubt, recognition. Whatever this is, it's not new to him. That realization changes the energy of everything that follows. The conversation with Lena doesn't continue the same way. There's a fracture now. He becomes more guarded, more aware of how much he's revealing just by being there. And yet, at the same time, there's a pull, like part of him wants to stay, wants to hold on to this brief moment of normalcy. But the film doesn't let him. He leaves abruptly. Not rudely, just suddenly. Like staying any longer would be a mistake he can't afford to make. And Lena watches him go, not confused but concerned in a quiet, measured way. She doesn't chase after him. She doesn't call out. She just observes. And that's important because it sets up something deeper than a typical connection. It's not about immediate trust or emotional bonding. It's about awareness. Two people recognizing that something is off, even if they don't fully understand what it is yet. From here, the story starts threading past and present together more aggressively. Evan's memories become less fragmented,
more insistent. You start seeing longer sequences now, moments that feel like they're on the verge of explaining everything, but always stop just short. There's a recurring image of that kitchen again, but now it's not just a still moment, it's an argument. You don't hear every word, but you don't need to. The body language says enough. Tension, frustration, something breaking down in real time. The woman, her face still not fully revealed, keeps saying something about running out of time. And Evan, or at least a version of him from before, looks like he's trying to hold on to something slipping away. And then, just like that, the memory cuts off. Back to the present. Evan in his apartment, lights off, sitting in the dark. Not hiding exactly, but not fully present either. The city outside continues as if nothing is wrong, but inside that space, everything feels suspended. Until there's a knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just there. Evan doesn't move right away. He listens, waits. Another knock, same rhythm. And for a moment, you think it might be Lena. The timing would make sense, the concern, the unanswered questions. But when he finally approaches the door, there's no urgency in his movement. It's cautious, deliberate, like he already suspects what, or who, might be on the other side. He opens it. No one. Just the hallway. Empty. Quiet. And for a split second, it almost feels like a false alarm. Like maybe this is another trick. Another intrusion from his own mind. Until the camera tilts down slightly. A small object on the floor, just inside the doorway. Something metallic. Scratched. And when Evan picks it up, you can see his hand tighten around it, not in confusion, but in recognition so immediate it almost hurts to watch. Because whatever this is, it connects everything.
And the way his grip tightens around that object, it's not curiosity driving that reaction. It's memory snapping back into place faster than he can control it. Like something he buried didn't stay buried. It just waited for the right moment to surface. He doesn't drop it. He doesn't even question it out loud. He just stands there in the doorway, the hallway still empty, the silence pressing in. And you can see it on his face. That shift from uncertainty into something far more dangerous. Understanding without context. And that's a very specific kind of fear. The kind where you recognize something deeply, but you don't yet know what it means in the present. The object itself isn't flashy. It's not designed to stand out. A small, worn piece of metal, edges rough, surface marked like it's been through something intense.
The film doesn't cut to a close-up right away. It lets you sit with Evan's reaction first, which is the right call, because whatever significance this thing holds isn't about what it is. It's about what it represents to him. He steps back inside slowly, closes the door with a kind of careful control, like even the sound of it clicking shut might trigger something. And then there's this long pause where he just stands in the middle of the room, holding that piece of metal, not moving, not blinking much. It's almost uncomfortable how still he becomes. And then it hits. Not gradually. All at once. The film doesn't ease into the memory this time. It slams into it. You're back in that kitchen, but now it's fully alive. No more fragments. No more half-heard dialogue. Everything is sharp, immediate, unavoidable. The woman is there, Claire, and now you see her clearly for the first time. Not idealized, not framed in some nostalgic glow, just real. Tired, frustrated, scared in a way she's trying not to show. And the argument you glimpsed earlier, it's not just an argument, it's a breaking point. Claire is talking about leaving. Not dramatically, not as a threat, more like a decision that's already been made internally. There's a finality to her tone that cuts deeper than anger ever could. And Evan, This version of him is different, more reactive, more defensive. He's trying to hold the situation together, but not in a healthy way. There's a desperation to it, like he's clinging to something that's already slipping through his fingers. The details start lining up, the stress, the distance, the sense that whatever happened between them didn't explode in one moment. It eroded over time. And then comes the shift in the memory. It's subtle at first. The conversation ends, not with resolution, but with exhaustion. Claire walks away, disappears into another room. Evan stays in the kitchen, hands on the counter, breathing unevenly. And for a second, it feels like the scene might just fade out there. But it doesn't. There's a sound. That same scraping sound. But now, in this context, it's different. Clearer. Closer. Evan hears it in the memory, the same way he hears it in the present. His head turns slightly, confusion mixing with irritation. He steps away from the counter, moves toward the source of the noise. And this is where the film does something incredibly precise. It mirrors his current behavior almost exactly. The hesitation, the controlled movement, the sense that he's approaching something he doesn't fully understand, but feels compelled to face anyway. He opens the back door, and the memory cuts, not fades, not resolves, just gone. You're back in the present again. Evan still standing in his apartment. The metal object now clearly tied to something you haven't fully seen yet. And the frustration here is intentional. The film is giving you more, but it's still holding the key piece just out of reach. Evan finally moves. Not with panic, not with urgency, but with a kind of quiet determination that feels new. Up until now, he's been reacting, avoiding, deflecting, surviving. But this moment changes that. There's a direction to him now, even if he doesn't fully understand where it leads. He grabs his jacket, pockets the object without looking at it again, and leaves the apartment. And here's where the external pressure ramps up in a way that feels inevitable. The hallway is empty again, but it doesn't feel neutral anymore. It feels watched. Not in an obvious cinematic way, no shadows moving, no figures lurking, but in the subtle shift of atmosphere. Like the space itself is aware of him now. He steps outside. Night again. The city hasn't changed, but the way it's framed has. The camera stays closer to him, tighter, more confined. You're not seeing the environment as much as you're feeling it through his perspective. Every sound is sharper, every movement more noticeable. And then, almost immediately, that car. Not across the street this time. Closer. Too close. Parked just down from his building. Angled in a way that suggests it wasn't there long. The engine isn't running, but there's a presence to it now that wasn't there before. It's no longer background detail. It's part of the scene. Evan doesn't approach it. He doesn't even look directly at it for more than a second. But you can tell he's calculating something. The distance, the timing, the possibility that whoever or whatever is connected to that car is no longer just observing. And that's when Lena re-enters the story. Not in a planned way, not in a way that feels convenient. She's just there, walking down the same street, coming from the opposite direction. She spots Evan first, calls out to him, not loudly, just enough to get his attention. And for a brief moment, everything pauses. Because this is the first time these two worlds, Evan's internal unraveling and this external growing threat, collide in the same physical space. Evan's reaction is immediate, but layered. There's relief in seeing a familiar face, but it's buried under something else. Concern, maybe even fear. Not for himself, but for her being there at all. Lena senses it right away. "What's going on?" she asks. And this time there's no casual tone behind it. Evan hesitates. Not because he doesn't want to answer, but because he doesn't know how to explain something that barely makes sense to him yet. And then, without looking at her, he says something that shifts everything again. "It found me." Simple, direct, no elaboration. And the way he says it, it's not a guess. It's certainty. Lena doesn't respond right away. She follows his gaze, finally noticing the car, the tension, the atmosphere that's been building around him this entire time. And you can see it on her face, that moment where curiosity turns into realization that this is bigger than she thought. The film doesn't give you a clear answer yet, but it gives you something just as powerful. Momentum. Because now, whatever this is, it's no longer contained to Evan alone. And once something like that spills beyond one person, it changes the stakes in a way you can't reverse. Because now, it's not just about survival, it's about consequence. About who else gets pulled into something they never agreed to be part of. Evan realizes that almost instantly. You can see it in how his posture shifts when Lena steps closer. Like there's a part of him that wants to push her away. Not emotionally, but physically, like distance might somehow keep her safe. But he doesn't move. That's the conflict. He knows isolation hasn't protected him so far, and now there's this quiet, unspoken question hanging between them. Is staying together more dangerous than splitting apart? Lena doesn't wait for a full explanation. She's already reading the situation in a way that feels grounded, not panicked. Her eyes flick back to that car, then back to Evan. And there's this moment, small but significant, where she makes a decision without announcing it. "I'm not leaving you here like this," she says, and it doesn't come off as heroic. It sounds practical, almost stubborn. Evan exhales, just slightly. Not relief exactly. More like acceptance, that whatever happens next, he's not handling it alone anymore. But the film doesn't let that moment settle into comfort, because the car door opens. No dramatic slam. No sudden burst of action. Just a quiet, deliberate movement that feels far more unsettling than anything loud could have been. The interior light flicks on for a second, but you don't see a face clearly. Just a silhouette shifting forward, stepping out into the dim streetlight. And this is where the pacing tightens again, but not through speed, through stillness. Nobody rushes. Evan doesn't run. Lena doesn't panic. They both just stand there, watching as this figure closes the distance slowly, like they're in complete control of the timing. There's something deeply unnerving about that kind of confidence. It suggests patience, intent, familiarity. When the figure finally steps into clearer light, the film still holds back just enough detail to keep you off balance. Mid-40s maybe, composed, not threatening in an obvious way. No aggressive posture, no raised voice. If anything, the calmness is what makes it worse. "Evan," the man says, like he's greeting someone he hasn't seen in a while. And that's the moment everything clicks into a new place. Because Evan doesn't ask who he is. He doesn't react with confusion. He just goes still, not frozen in fear, but locked into recognition so deep it overrides everything else. Lena notices that immediately. Her gaze shifts between them, trying to read the dynamic, trying to understand What kind of history could create that kind of silence? The man steps closer, stopping just outside of arm's reach. Close enough to feel invasive, but not close enough to provoke an immediate reaction. You've been hard to find, he continues, tone even, almost conversational. Evan finally speaks, and when he does, his voice is lower than before, controlled, but strained underneath. I didn't think you were still... He stops himself, doesn't finish the sentence. And that unfinished thought says more than anything else could. The man tilts his head slightly, like he's amused by the hesitation. That's usually the mistake, he replies. There's no rush in his delivery, no need to assert dominance. It's already there, embedded in the way he carries himself. The way he speaks like the outcome of this interaction has never been in question. Lena steps forward then, just slightly. Not confrontational, but enough to place herself in the dynamic rather than outside of it. Who are you? She asks. And for the first time, the man looks at her directly. There's a pause. Not long, but deliberate. Like he's deciding how much she matters in this equation. Then, simply, someone he owes. That word, owes, lands heavy. It reframes everything you've seen so far. The running, the avoidance, the fragments of memory. This isn't random. It's not just psychological unraveling. There's a past here with weight, with consequences that didn't stay buried. Evan shakes his head slightly, not in denial, but in resistance. That's not how this works, he says. And there's something in his tone now that wasn't there before. Not confidence, but defiance. The first real sign that he's not just going to be pulled along anymore. The man's expression doesn't change. That's exactly how it works, he replies, almost gently. And then, without warning, but also without aggression, he reaches into his coat. Evan reacts immediately, stepping forward, placing himself between the man and Lena. It's instinctive, protective, and that action alone shifts the dynamic again. But the man isn't pulling out a weapon. It's something smaller, familiar. Another piece of metal, almost identical to the one Evan is carrying. He holds it up, not threateningly, just enough for it to catch the light. You kept yours, he says. And now the pieces start aligning in a way that feels both revealing and deeply unsettling. Whatever these objects are, they're not random. They're markers, connections, evidence of something shared, something binding. Evan's hand instinctively moves toward his pocket, like he can feel the weight of it more intensely now. You should have left it behind, the man continues. And there's a subtle shift in his tone here. Not anger, not even disappointment. Something closer to inevitability. That's what you were supposed to do. Evan doesn't respond right away, because now he's remembering more. You can see it happening in real time. The way his expression changes, the way his focus drifts for just a second as something clicks into place internally. And when he speaks again, it's quieter. I tried. That's it. No elaboration, but it carries everything. The man studies him for a moment, like he's measuring the truth of that statement. Then he nods, almost imperceptibly. I know, he says. And somehow, that acknowledgement feels worse than accusation, because it means this isn't about misunderstanding. It's about something that was always going to come back around. Lena looks between them again, clearly trying to piece together a history she wasn't part of, and the tension of not knowing is starting to press in on her now. What is this? she asks, more firmly this time. Evan glances at her, and there's a hesitation there. Not because he doesn't want to answer, but because he knows that once he does, there's no going back to whatever normal looked like before. And that hesitation is all the man needs. She shouldn't be here, he says, not to Lena, but to Evan. Not as a threat, as a statement of fact. And for the first time since this encounter began, there's a hint of urgency beneath the calm. Because whatever this is, it's accelerating. And that acceleration isn't loud or explosive. It's subtle, like pressure building under the surface, where nobody else can see it yet. But everyone involved can feel it getting tighter with every second that passes. And Evan understands that better than anyone standing on that street right now. His eyes flick to Lena again, just for a moment, and there's something in that look that wasn't there before. It's not just concern anymore. It's calculation. Not cold, not detached, but deliberate. Like he's finally making a decision instead of avoiding one. Go, he says quietly. Lena doesn't move. Not out of defiance. Not because she doesn't understand what he's asking, but because she's already crossed a line just by standing here. Leaving now doesn't undo that. It doesn't put things back to normal. I'm not, she starts, but Evan cuts her off. Not harshly, just firmly. Lena. That's all he says. But it carries weight now. It's the first time he's used her name like that. Like it means something specific in this moment. The man watches this exchange with mild interest. Like he's seen variations of it before. Like he already knows how it plays out. She really doesn't understand, he says, almost conversationally. And there's a faint edge of something under the surface now. Not impatience, but a kind of inevitability tightening. Evan doesn't take his eyes off him. She doesn't need to. That's not how this works, the man replies again, echoing Evan's earlier words, but now with a slight shift in tone, like the phrase belongs to him more than it ever did to Evan. And that repetition, it lands differently this time. Less like a statement, more like a rule being enforced. Lena exhales slowly, grounding herself, trying to cut through the layers of tension building around her. Then maybe someone should actually explain it, she says, and there's a steadiness in her voice now that wasn't there before. Not reckless, not emotional, focused. The man looks at her again, longer this time, evaluating. And there's a brief moment where you think he might dismiss her completely, but he doesn't. Instead, he shifts his attention back to Evan. You haven't told her anything? He asks. Evan's jaw tightens slightly. There's nothing to tell. And that's the first real lie you hear him say. Not because the film highlights it, but because you can feel it. It doesn't sit right. It doesn't align with everything that's been building. The man notices that too. There's always something, he replies. And now there's a subtle change in his posture. Not aggressive, but more engaged. Like the conversation has finally reached the point he's been waiting for. He takes another step forward. Not enough to provoke a reaction. Just enough to close the distance further. You remember the night, don't you? He says. And that question lands like a fracture point. Because Evan doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. The reaction is immediate. His shoulders tense, his breathing shifts, and for a split second, you can see it in his eyes. Not confusion, not doubt. Memory. Full, unfiltered, unavoidable. The film doesn't cut away this time. It stays with him as it happens. And then it pulls you back into it. But this isn't like the earlier memories. This isn't fragmented or incomplete. This is the night. The one everything keeps circling back to. It's raining. Not dramatically, not in some cinematic downpour, just steady, persistent rain that soaks everything slowly, thoroughly. The kind of rain that doesn't feel urgent, but changes the environment completely over time. Evan is driving, faster than he should be, not recklessly, but with a tension that's pushing him just past the edge of control. The road is familiar. You can tell by the way he navigates it without hesitation. This isn't a random drive. Claire is in the passenger seat, alive, present, and the energy between them is different from the kitchen scene. Not explosive, not argumentative, but strained in a quieter, more dangerous way. The kind of silence that comes after something has already been said and can't be taken back. "You don't have to do this tonight," she says, her voice measured, careful. Evan doesn't respond right away. His focus stays on the road. "It's already in motion," he finally replies. And that line, it echoes something deeper, something connected to everything happening in the present. You can feel it tying threads together, even before you fully understand how. Claire looks at him, really looks this time. "This isn't motion," she says softly. "This is you trying to outrun something." And that hits. You can see it land, even if Evan doesn't acknowledge it directly. The rain gets heavier. Visibility drops just slightly. And then, headlights, bright, sudden, too close. Another car. The same car. Even in the memory, it's there. It appears behind them first, closing distance quickly, but not aggressively. Just deliberately, matching their speed, staying just close enough to be noticed. Evan sees it. You can tell by the way his grip on the wheel tightens. Claire notices too. That car, she starts, but doesn't finish. Because she already knows. There's no confusion in her reaction, only recognition. And that's when everything shifts. Evan accelerates. Not dramatically, not in a high-speed chase kind of way, but enough to break the balance that had been holding. The road curves ahead, slick from the rain, visibility compromised just enough to make every decision heavier. The car behind them doesn't fall back. It stays, consistent, unrelenting. And then, that sound, louder now, clearer, not just scraping, grinding, metal under pressure. Evan's focus fractures for just a second, just enough. The road curves sharper than expected. The tires lose traction, and the moment stretches, not in slow motion, but in perception. You feel every fraction of it, the wheel turning, the car sliding, Claire's hand reaching out, not in panic, but instinct. And then, impact, violent, abrupt, final. The memory doesn't cut away immediately. It lingers just long enough for you to register the aftermath. The silence after the crash is deafening. Rain hitting metal. Steam rising from the engine. Evan, conscious, disoriented, but alive. Claire. The film doesn't show you directly. It doesn't need to. The absence tells you everything. And then, movement. Outside the car. A figure approaching. The door on Evan's side opens. That same man. Younger, but unmistakably him. He looks down at Evan, not with concern, not with urgency, but with something far more controlled. "You were supposed to walk away," he says. The exact same line, the exact same tone. And now, in the present, standing on that street, that memory crashes back into Evan all at once, fully intact, fully understood. His breathing is heavier now, not panicked, grounded in something real. And when he looks at the man again, It's not with confusion anymore. It's with clarity. You left her there, Evan says, voice low, steady. The man doesn't deny it, because he doesn't need to. And Lena, standing just behind Evan, finally understands one thing with absolute certainty. This isn't just about the past. It's about something that was never finished.
And the silence that follows that, it's different now. Not empty. Loaded. Because Lena doesn't respond right away. Not because she doesn't have something to say, but because whatever she could say wouldn't change the reality of what just happened. Evan is gone. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally removed from this moment, placed somewhere else, somewhere before all of this. She slowly releases the breath she didn't realize she was holding. You said he'd come back, she says, her voice low, controlled, but carrying an edge now. The man doesn't look away. I said he wouldn't return until it was complete. That's not the same thing, she snaps, sharper this time. No, he agrees, it isn't. That honesty doesn't help. If anything, it makes it worse. Lena looks down the street, like she half expects Evan to just reappear. Like maybe this is something that can reverse itself as quickly as it happened. But nothing moves. Nothing changes.
And that stillness starts to settle into something colder. What is this? She asks, turning back to him. What are you exactly? Because this isn't just some memory loop or trauma response. You're controlling it. There's a pause, not defensive, measured. I'm maintaining it, he says. That's not an answer. It's the only accurate one. Lena takes a step toward him now, frustration pushing past caution. Maintaining what? And this time, he actually answers. The moment that didn't resolve. That phrasing again, precise, clinical, almost detached from the human weight of it. But Lena isn't detached. People don't get maintained, she says. Moments don't just sit there waiting for a redo. This one does. Why? Another pause. But this one is different. He's deciding something. And when he speaks again, there's a subtle shift. Not softer, not kinder, but more exposed. Because it didn't collapse properly, he says. Lena frowns, trying to parse that. What does that even mean? It means, he continues, that the outcome was left in a state of uncertainty. And uncertainty, at that scale, doesn't dissipate. It anchors. That word sticks. Anchors. Anchors to what? She asks. His gaze lifts slightly, not toward the sky, not toward anything visible, just outward. To him. Lena's expression tightens. So Evan's been, what, tied to that night this whole time? Yes. And you're just deciding now to fix it. I didn't decide, he says. He reached the threshold. That sends a chill through her. Threshold of what? Recognition. That lands heavier than she expects, because it lines up. The car, the memories, the way things escalated once Evan stopped dismissing it as coincidence or stress. You're saying none of this starts until he remembers? She asks. Not fully, the man replies. Partial awareness creates distortion. Full awareness allows access. Lena processes that. Her thoughts moving faster now, connecting pieces whether she wants to or not. And if he hadn't remembered, then it would have remained incomplete. For how long? The man meets her eyes. As long as necessary. That answer is almost worse than anything else, because it suggests there was no expiration, no natural end, just waiting. Lena shakes her head slightly, trying to ground herself. This is insane, she mutters, but it doesn't carry the same disbelief anymore. Now it sounds like someone acknowledging something they don't want to accept, but can't deny. Her gaze drifts again to the spot where Evan stood. He said she was still alive, she says quietly. After the crash. Yes. And he left anyway. Yes. There's no judgment in the man's voice. No blame. Just fact. Lena's jaw tightens. Then why give him another chance? She asks. Why not just let it stay what it was? The man watches her carefully. It isn't about giving him another chance. Then what is it? It's about removing the uncertainty. That answer feels colder than anything he said so far. Even if the result is the same, she presses, especially if the result is the same. Because then it's final. No questions, no what ifs, just truth. Lena exhales slowly, her mind circling around that idea, trying to find something to push against. And what happens to him if it is the same? She asks. If he stays. And she can't finish it, but she doesn't need to. The man answers anyway. Then the moment resolves. That's not an answer, she says again, quieter now. It's the only one that applies. Lena looks at him, really looks this time, trying to see past the controlled tone, the precise language, the lack of emotion. You talk like none of this matters, she says. That's incorrect, he replies. It matters exactly as much as it needs to. That's not how people work. No, he agrees. It isn't. And there it is again, that slight disconnect. Not hostility, not indifference, just a fundamentally different framework. Lena wraps her arms loosely around herself, not out of fear, but out of something closer to containment, like she's trying to hold on to a sense of normalcy that's slipping further away by the second. And what am I supposed to do? She asks after a moment. Just stand here and wait? The man considers that. For now, he says. For how long? There's no hesitation in his answer. As long as it takes for him to stay. That wording hits her immediately. Not, come back, stay. So if he leaves again, she starts. He won't return, the man finishes. Silence, heavy, unforgiving. Lena closes her eyes for a brief second, just long enough to steady herself. When she opens them again, there's something different there. Not acceptance, not calm, but resolve. You're wrong about one thing, she says. The man tilts his head slightly. Which is? That I'm just going to stand here and do nothing. That's the first time she's pushed back in a way that isn't emotional. It's intentional. Directed. The man studies her, and for the first time, there's a hint of something almost like curiosity. You don't have access to the moment, he says. Maybe not the way he does, she replies, but I'm connected to him. That connection isn't sufficient. You don't know that. A pause. And this time, it's not just him considering something. It's the system around them. Because the air shifts again, subtler than before, but noticeable. Like something just registered her intent. The man's expression changes, just slightly. You shouldn't attempt that, he says. Why? Because you don't understand the consequences. Lena holds his gaze. Neither does he. And that lands, because it's true. Evan walked into this without guarantees, without clarity, without knowing what happens if it goes wrong. And now, so might she. The man exhales slowly, and there's that same faint trace of uncertainty again, like the structure he's maintaining wasn't designed for this kind of interference. If you force entry, he says, you won't be anchored. I don't need to be anchored, she replies. You do, if you want to return. That gives her pause, just for a second, but not enough to stop her. Her gaze shifts again, focusing, not on the street, not on the man, but on the absence. Evan left behind. If he's in there, she says quietly, then that's where I'm going. The air tightens, just like it did before. But this time, it's responding to her. The man steps forward, sharper now. Lena, too late. Because the moment she stops doubting, the world begins to bend. And it isn't a dramatic collapse or some loud cinematic tear in reality. It's quieter than that, which makes it worse. It feels like the environment forgets how to stay consistent. The streetlight above them flickers once, then holds, then flickers again, but not in rhythm anymore. The sound of distant traffic thins out like someone is slowly turning a dial down on the world. Even the space between breaths feels slightly delayed, like time itself is hesitating. Lena feels it first in her body, not her eyes. That subtle pressure shift, like gravity isn't quite agreeing with itself. The man reacts immediately. First real urgency you've seen from him. Not panic, but correction. Like something is moving outside the intended structure. "You're not aligned," he says sharply. Lena doesn't answer. Her focus is already somewhere else, because the street in front of her is thinning, not disappearing, not vanishing, more like layers peeling apart, and beneath it, something else is starting to show through. A faint echo of a different place, not fully formed yet, but familiar in a way that makes her stomach tighten without explanation. The man steps closer, his voice lower now, controlled, but strained. "You will destabilize the return point." "I don't care," Lena says, and that's the moment everything changes direction. Because Evan's absence was one thing, but an external force trying to enter that space, that wasn't part of the structure. The air around her distorts more sharply now, like reality is trying to correct itself and failing. The edges of the street bend slightly inward, not visually obvious at first, but perceptible if you focus on the wrong detail for too long. The man raises his hand slightly, not toward her, but toward the space between them. A grounding gesture, a correction attempt, but it doesn't fully take, because Lena is already too close to whatever threshold Evan crossed, and now she's crossing it in a different way. "You can't follow him like this," the man says. "Watch me," she replies, and then the sound returns, not scraping this time, something deeper, layered, like multiple versions of the same moment overlapping imperfectly. Lena closes her eyes instinctively for half a second, and when she opens them again, the street is no longer stable. It's not a full transition yet, more like a fracture forming in real time. And through that fracture, she sees it, the crash site, rain, metal twisted at impossible angles, and Evan, standing outside it, not as he is now, as he was then, that younger version of him, soaked, shaking, staring at something just out of frame. Lena's breath catches, because she isn't just seeing it. She's there, partially, not fully embedded, but not separate anymore either. A liminal overlap. The man reacts instantly, stepping toward her. "This is not your entry point," he says, voice sharper now. But Lena barely hears him, because she sees Evan turn, slowly, and look directly at her. Except, he shouldn't be able to see her. This is memory. This is past. But his eyes lock onto hers anyway. And for a second, everything stabilizes in a strange, impossible equilibrium. Evan doesn't speak. Not yet. But his expression shifts. Confusion first, then recognition of something he can't place. And that's when the man's voice cuts through again. Harder this time. "Pull back." Lena doesn't move, because something about Evan's gaze is anchoring her more than the system trying to eject her. And then, Evan speaks, not clearly, not fully formed, just a broken fragment of a sentence carried through distortion. "You're not supposed to be here." Lena takes a step forward instinctively. "I'm here," she says, and the moment she does, the fracture widens. The crash site flickers. The present tries to reassert itself, and the two realities start fighting for dominance. The man moves quickly now, placing himself between Lena and the instability. "You're collapsing separation," he says. "If you fully enter..." "I know," Lena cuts him off, but she doesn't stop, because Evan is still there. And now he's reacting more clearly. Not fear, not confusion. Something closer to recognition that shouldn't be possible. The younger Evan looks past her, towards something behind her in that fractured space. And Lena turns slightly, just enough to see it. Not the crash, not the street, but another layer beneath it. A version of Evan standing still, present Evan, watching from inside the system. And for a brief moment, all three perspectives overlap in a single unstable frame. Past Evan, present Evan, Lena between them, and the man realizing too late that this is no longer controlled recursion. This is interference. "You weren't supposed to see across layers," he says, voice tightening. Lena looks back at him. "Then maybe your system is wrong." That line hits harder than it should, because it implies something fundamental, not just broken rules, broken design. The environment shudders again. The crash scene starts to dissolve. But instead of snapping back cleanly, it fragments further. And now Lena is no longer just observing the moment. She is inside it, fully. The rain is real now. Cold, immediate. The smell of fuel, metal, burnt rubber, everything layered on top of each other. Evan is closer. Younger Evan. And now he's speaking more clearly, though still strained by the instability. "You shouldn't be here," he says again. Lena takes a breath, steadying herself. "I know." That answer seems to confuse him more than anything, because she shouldn't exist in this moment. And yet she does. The man's voice cuts through again, but now it feels distant, like it's being filtered through too many layers. "Lena, you need to exit now." But she doesn't look back, because Evan is still looking at her. And this version of him, this fractured earlier version, does something subtle. He steps closer, just slightly, and says something quieter now. "Did it change?" Lena freezes, because that question doesn't belong here. Not in this moment, not in this structure. But Evan is asking it anyway. Like some part of him already knows this isn't the original timeline. Lena doesn't answer immediately, because the truth is, she doesn't know what it is supposed to be anymore. Behind her, the man's voice tightens further. "If you engage him, you lock the overlap." But it's already too late for clean separation, because Evan has already reached her. Not physically, but conceptually. The moment has connected, and the system can feel it breaking. And that's when the collapse stops being subtle and starts becoming undeniable. Not in the sense of loud destruction or visual chaos, but in something far more unsettling. The rules that were holding everything in place begin to lose consistency altogether. Like a recording that's been paused and resumed too many times, where the continuity starts to drift just slightly out of alignment with itself. Lena can feel it now in her breathing, in the rhythm of the rain, in the way Evan's presence doesn't stay fixed the way it should. He's there, but not fully stable. Neither is she. And the worst part is that Evan, this younger version of him, seems to sense it too. His eyes keep shifting, not just between Lena and the environment, but between versions of the environment. Like he's catching glimpses of something layered beneath what he's supposed to be seeing. The man steps forward again, urgency now fully present in his voice. "You are contaminating the recall state," he says sharply. Lena finally turns her head slightly toward him. "Stop talking like I'm the problem," she replies. "You are not supposed to be here," he repeats, more forcefully now. And yet I am, she says. That simple contradiction pushes something further out of balance, because the system was built around rules that assume separation, observer and subject, past and present, cause and consequence. But Lena being here breaks that boundary in a way it clearly wasn't designed to handle. Evan, both versions of him, in overlapping ways, stares at her now, and something shifts in his expression. Not recognition of her as a person exactly, but recognition of disruption. Like the idea of her existing here forces him to question the certainty of everything around him. You're not from here, younger Evan says slowly. Lena swallows. No, she answers. I'm not. That confirmation ripples through the environment. The rain stutters. Not stops. Stutters. Like reality itself misfires for half a second. The man moves quickly now, trying to stabilize the field. This is beyond your access point, he says, voice tightening further. You cannot remain embedded in a non-origin state. Lena looks at him fully now. And what happens if I do? A pause. Not because he doesn't know, but because saying it out loud reinforces it. You will be unanchored, he finally says. Meaning what? You will not return. That lands differently now than it would have earlier, because earlier it would have sounded like a warning. Now it sounds like a boundary being acknowledged as already crossed. Lena glances back at Evan. Both versions. And for the first time, she realizes something deeper about what she stepped into. This isn't just memory retrieval. It's a layered structure where presence itself has weight, and she has inserted herself into a moment that was never designed to hold her. But Evan, present Evan, the one still partially threaded through this instability, takes a small step forward, not fully formed, not fully stable, but present enough to speak. You followed, he says. It's not a question. It's an observation that feels almost distant, like he's processing it from two timelines at once. Lena nods slightly. I said I would. That simple exchange creates a strange stabilization point between them. Not fixing the system, but centering it around connection. And that's dangerous in a structure like this. The man notices immediately. You are reinforcing cross-state binding, he says. Lena doesn't look away from Evan. I don't care what you call it. You are collapsing separation logic. Then maybe separation logic is the problem. That line triggers something deeper, because now it's not just a disruption. It's a challenge to the entire framework. The air tightens again. The crash scene flickers harder this time, unstable, unable to maintain consistent form. And younger Evan reacts suddenly, stepping back slightly, as if something about Lena's presence is forcing him to remember more than he should be able to access. I saw this before, he says quietly. Lena's focus sharpens. Saw what? But he doesn't answer clearly. Instead, his gaze drifts past her again, to something just beyond perception. And that's when Lena realizes he's not just remembering the crash. He's remembering variations of it, different outcomes, different endings that never stabilized. The man raises his hand again, more forceful now. Containment is failing, he says. You must exit now. But Lena doesn't move, because Evan, present Evan, is looking at her in a way that doesn't feel like memory anymore. It feels like choice. And that's the fracture point. Not the crash, not the memory, but the realization that even within a controlled moment, agency still exists. You're here because I didn't finish it, Evan says quietly. Lena nods. Yes. A pause. And if I do? He asks. And that question changes everything again, because it reframes the entire structure of consequence, not as punishment, not as correction, but as completion. The man's voice sharpens instantly. Do not engage that directive. But it's already been spoken, already been received, and the system reacts, not smoothly, but violently. The environment distorts sharply now, like multiple timelines trying to assert dominance over the same physical space. The rain stops making sense. The ground flickers between wet asphalt and fractured memory fragments. Lena feels herself destabilizing at the edges, but she doesn't step back, because Evan is still there, and he's closer now, not physically advancing, but emotionally aligned. And that alignment is what the system can't tolerate. Evan exhales slowly and says, almost quietly, "Then I stay." The moment that sentence is completed, everything fractures.